What makes a raid a raid? Is it the loot, the aesthetic, the bosses, the music, the rush of dopamine during the final stand?
Yes!
I'd say it's all of these things. Raids are Destiny's endgame activity and require you to recruit 5 other pals to complete a series of puzzles and boss fights to escalate in difficulty. The rewards are weapons and armor that boast a visual flair in tune with the theme of the raid. In my humble opinion, raids are the best content Destiny has to offer. They can be extremely intimidating at first, but they aren't really that bad once you get into them. They present a fun challenge to newer players in the form of learning roles and using your communication skills. Scary, I know. Some of my favorite memories of playing this game come from doing raids, and I will forever love that. I remember my first time two-manning Crota's End with my friend in middle school. There's truly no feeling like getting the final blow on a boss during the final stand seconds before you wipe. So why say all this? Destiny is well known for its intricate lore, gameplay, and day one raid races, but the main draw for me is the lore. Some of the best lore in the game is tucked away in the background and contains key character details for better or for worse. One big lore thread in this web of a universe would be that of the Witness and its disciples. The Witness has existed for eons, chasing the Traveler from galaxy to galaxy, and along the way it has crowned many as its disciples. We know of a few, that being Rolk, Nezarec, Callus, and even Savathun was in the process of becoming one before she betrayed the Witness. Today I want to focus on 2 specific disciples and their raids. Rolk, the first disciple, and Nezarec, final god of pain. In this video, we will go through each raid and their encounters and compare them side by side. We're leaving nothing out, so music and aesthetic are all counted too, and by the end, we will decide which is the superior raid. So grab your favorite exotic, sign up for an LFG, and let's get right into this. Throughout this video, I will be using footage from other content creators for certain segments. All credit to their channels will be linked in the description below. To start this video off, we will be looking at the opening encounters of the 2 raids and the environments they take place in. For Val, we start in the Miasma and face off against a projection of Savathun and numerous Lucent Hive. Once the projection is destroyed, we can proceed into the Disciples' Bog. On the flip side, in Root, we fly into the Witness's ruined pyramid and are greeted by roots of light overrunning the pyramid. We fight some small squads of Shadow Legion, but it's more visual storytelling and letting the environment wash over you than anything else. In both of these raids, we are taunted throughout by each disciple, so we'll be judging their personalities later. If we're being honest, Val looks cool with the looming pyramid in the background, but Root takes the cake in the visual department. Like, look at these roots and the massive seed in the background. It's just beautiful. Sure, I've mentioned in videos before that I like the pyramid architecture, but the roots are so pretty. So a point goes to Root. Here we are, the first official encounter of the raids. I'll start by explaining how each encounter works and then comparing them on a fun factor and complexity. Keep in mind this is subjective, so my opinion may differ from yours, which is perfectly okay. If you agree or disagree, let me know in the comments below. We start by playing some TF2 and escort the payload through a City of Darkness architecture. For this part, you have to collect little darkness shards, which you can carry a maximum of 3, and deposit them at the payload to proceed forward. Scorn will spawn in throughout, including abominations that will oppress you with pervading darkness. Get 10 stacks of this and you'll die. You can do this a number of 6 times before you are granted access to the pyramid. Now with Root, the raid begins with introducing a mechanic that will appear repeatedly throughout the raid. In front of the rally flag exists a small floating seed with an aura around it, and a ripple-like white flooring beneath it. Standing within the aura and firing upon the seed will grant guardians within the field of light buff, and begin the encounter. Once shot, the seed will display a thin white trail in the direction of another similar ripple-like white floor, with another smaller seed floating above it. A designated runner should go towards this, stand next to it, and fire at it while holding down the field of light buff to link the seed with the previous one. This will wipe the field of light buff from the runner. They should then return to the initial seed to reobtain the buff in the same way, then follow the trail of the white lines to discover the location of the next seed, repeating this until all seeds have been linked. The location where the field of light is obtained will change, so the guardians taking this job needs to be aware of the position of these and to keep refreshing the buff. While the runner is performing their duties, the rest of the fire team will have to deal with almost endless waves of Cabal units, as well as the regular mix of legionaries, phalanxes, warbeasts, and more. A pair of special bubble enclosed scions will spawn in various locations around the arena, which must be killed. Once killed, a tormentor and a barrier champion will spawn on opposite sides of the arena. Dealing with the tormentors is top priority, as defeating them will extend the timer on a sweeping terror via a message stating his hatred halts. If sweeping terror is allowed to expire, then the team will be wiped by a burst of energy from the sarcophagus in the midfield of the arena. 4 separate chains of fields of light must be made to complete the encounter. Honestly, I have more fun doing Root's mechanic here than standing around on a cart for 10 minutes and how fast-paced it is. Plus the ad density and environment storytelling are simply better here. You can literally see Nezarek's body being built in the background. I know I've already said it, but the mix of light roots and dark pyramid architecture is so nice, and seeing that giant seed in the background only hints at the beauty to come. Point to Root. In this section, Guardians must defend 3 obelisks from Scorn attackers, various minor units, and unstoppable abominations. 2 elite lurkers named Abated Adherent will home in on the obelisk, firing upon it rather than the players, causing it to fill up on energy. Once any obelisk completely fills, a wipe will occur, killing all Guardians. To complete this section and open the way to continue, 3 specific symbols on each obelisk must be shot within a short period of time of each other. Knowing which to shoot is revealed via a very specific process. The fire team should split up into 3 teams, 2 to each obelisk, with one nominated as the runner and the other as the defender. Directly across from each obelisk there are 3 columns of 3 panels that would start out blank. When the encounter begins, by firing upon the darkness switch in the middle of the arena, the top symbol will be revealed on one of these columns, showing either Traveler or Pyramid. This indicates the spawn point for the Disciples' Compass taken Knight. The large central structures in the arena will indicate which side is Traveler and which side is Pyramid, via the symbols found on them. Killing the Disciples' Compass will reveal the next symbol on the column that indicates its spawn point. The middle symbol will then reveal which room must be entered, of which there are 9 spread across the arena. Each runner will have 3 rooms they handle, closest to the obelisk. The runner must enter the specific room, beginning to reveal the next symbol of the concerned column. If the door of the room is not open, shoot the darkness switch to swap which side of the doors are open, Traveler or Pyramid. Once inside, the runner will contend with waves of Screebs and 2 Glyphkeeper chieftains, spawning on the light and dark side of the room. Depending on which the 3rd symbol is revealed on the column, outside, light or dark, the runner should kill the corresponding Glyphkeeper, which will then reveal a symbol on its initial spawn point. This will be one of the symbols you have to shoot on an obelisk outside. Killing a Glyphkeeper will reset the level of energy in all obelisks around the room, providing more time to survive. Repeat this process of hunting the Knight via the revealed symbol, sending a runner to the specific room, and calling out whether to kill light or dark on the Glyphkeepers until you have 3 symbols. Once you know all three, check which obelisk has all three symbols and shoot them within a short time period of one another. This will then accept your offering to complete the first stage. If you are too slow to shoot the symbols, your offering will be rejected, shuffling the symbols and causing the obelisks to fill up with energy. Try shooting the right symbols again to proceed. Repeat this process until you have shot 3 symbols for each of the 3 obelisks, and you will succeed. Next up for Root's second encounter is a repeat of the first, this time with a new element thrown into the mix. As before, Field of Light is obtained by shooting the floating seed above a white ripple-like flooring. To contrast this, a Flux of Darkness buff is obtained from a seed of darkness floating above a yellow-orange rippling-like floor. The arena is split into 2 sections made up of 3 separate floors, divided by a huge chasm. With the fire team starting on the bottom floor, split your fire team up on the left and right side, nominate a runner for each side, and prepare to create chains between light and dark seeds as per their specific alignment. Your fire team will have a time limit to complete the light and dark chains on each floor, indicated by the imminent explosion timer on your HUD. Failure to complete them within the time limit will create a certain surprise to happen. I picture it! As these chains will require cross-jumping the impossible-to-jump chasm, Guardians will need to utilize plungers located along the edges. In front of each plunger, there exists a small pyramid technology switch. Upon being shot, the plunger will strike the Guardian and send them rocketing across the gap. Due to the nature of the physics in the game, Guardians will need to make sure they are touching the plunger itself before shooting the switch. Without doing this, the plunger can fall short, providing the impetus needed to help cross the gap. As runners perform their tasks of chaining the light and dark seeds to each other respectively, the other Guardians will need to deal with a wave of Cabal. Occasionally, special Cabal units will spawn that are surrounded by light, radiolescent of Splendor, or dark, radiolescent of Decay aura. Splendor represents light and Decay represents dark. You know, the usual stuff. These units can only be damaged while under the influence of a Field of Light or Flux of Darkness. When a runner refreshes their buff at the seed, Guardians not partaking in running should stand within the aura to obtain their side's respective buffs, so they can deal with these special units. Towards the end of the chain, a Barrier Colossus will spawn, so the Guardians should prepare to deal with it using anti-barrier abilities or weaponry. Once the 2 chains are complete for the floor currently being worked on, the imminent explosion timer will disappear temporarily and a wave of aura holding enemies will spawn. Defeating all these enemies will require the corresponding buff. Once defeated, a switch will spawn for the plunger at the end of the floor, allowing the usage of the plunger to ascend to the next level of the arena, where the previous steps must be repeated to spawn another switch for another plunger to reach the 3rd level, wherein the final sets of chains must be made to complete the encounter. This one was a bit difficult to decide on. While Root has the really cool wall wipe mechanic, you don't necessarily need your whole fire team to complete this encounter, whereas for Val, you need multiple people at once and a good run for this encounter. With Root, the launch mechanics to send teams across the chasm is very inconsistent, and that's throughout the whole raid. Plus, symbols are cool, so point goes to Val. Okay, here we go. Now we're getting into the meat of this discussion. The Caretaker versus Zo-Arak, Explicator of Planets. These 2 are the first bosses you'll face in their respective raids. Both are imbued with darkness and serve their disciples well. Let's first dive into the lore of these 2 characters and what their purpose in the world of Destiny is. Not much is known about the Caretaker, such as its origin or true purpose. The only available information is from an evidence board entry. Speculation from a member of the Hidden theorized that the Caretaker was the successful result of a fusion between the Scorn and a worm larva. As it is deceased, along with Rolk, not much more knowledge can be obtained about it. This is a cool concept because throughout the raid, especially in the hallway right before acquisition, you can see Scorn being infused with worm larva, and the idea of a successful infusion becoming this powerful foe is really intimidating. Now as for Zo-Arak, there's nothing. No, I'm being serious. His Wikipedia page has nothing story-wise for him. He's literally a giant fancy Incendior. This is already a massive miss for Root, so you can probably guess where this point is going to. But before we get there, let's go through the mechanics of this encounter. For the Caretaker fight, a recommended setup is to split up into 3 teams of 2. One team will be the Symbol team, another team will be the Stun team, and the third team will be the Kill team. To begin, shoot either of the darkness switches on the sides of the door opposite the obelisk. We'll start with the Symbol team. The Symbol team's job is to enter the dark room across from the obelisk one at a time. The reason for a one at a time rule is that the door with the room will close for after a short period, leaving the Guardian trapped inside. Shooting a switch outside will open the door again. The other team members should be keeping the door open at all times while assisting the Kill team. Once inside, pervading darkness stacks will begin to occur, of which 10 will kill the Guardian. Symbols can be found floating off the ground in the room, of which Guardians can pick up a maximum of 3. The objective is for the Symbol team member to race into the room, grab symbols, leave the room, and then shoot the corresponding symbols they picked up on the outside. Warning text in the bottom left corner will indicate when a Guardian can begin shooting their symbols to provide an offering. Picking up only 2 symbols is advised, as it is easier to be able to shoot 2 with the small time frame you have your offering to accept. Picking up 3 risks having each symbol be on a different face of the triangular prism that makes up an obelisk. You have a tough time frame to rotate and shoot the right symbol on all 3 sides, in this instance. With only 2 symbols, you may have them both on one side or can stand facing against the edge shared by the 2 sides and shoot the symbols you have with ease. Failing to shoot the correct symbols in the granted time frame will cause the offering to be rejected, meaning you lose any symbols you collected, returning them to the room. Be careful of your pervading darkness stacks when entering the room. The Stun team's objective is to prevent the Caretaker from progressing to the obelisk, as once it reaches the obelisk, it will overflow the obelisk with energy, killing all the raid team members. One member should be nominated as the face side, and the other should be the back side. The face side member should stick close to the Caretaker, which will force it to fixate on them. They should then shoot the face of the Caretaker when it glows, which will cause the coffin-like object on its back to open, exposing a weak point. The backside member should then shoot this weak point, which will cause the Caretaker to become stunned, falling to one knee. The face side member should always try to rotate the Caretaker so that it is walking backward toward the obelisk, which will allow the backside member to stun it easily, and also provide the ability for other Guardians to assist with shooting this if the backside member is unable to for any reason. As the face side member, be wary of the stomps from the Caretaker. A well-timed melee attack will prevent you from being knocked away. The Kill team's objective is to kill any and all enemies that spawn in the room. Abated adherents will spawn again, aiming to shoot at the obelisk to fill it with energy. These take priority over other enemies. Kill team members should also help take care of any darkness scale drones that spawn from the Caretaker's back. Leaving these alive can heavily endanger the Stun team, as they will turn into homing missiles when an unsuspected mechanism is triggered. Once all 9 of the symbols on the obelisk have been shot and cleared, the Caretaker will no longer be stunnable, continuing its advance to the obelisk. 3 plates surround the obelisk, which is where damage is performed. When the Caretaker reaches an obelisk, the plate from the side the Caretaker approached will glow, providing a resonant breakthrough buff to anyone standing on it. This allows damage to be done. After a set amount of time, the plate will depower, and the next one along will begin glowing. Move to this plate as the group begins and do damage once more. Once you have done all 3 plates, or have done enough damage, the Caretaker will gain immunity and teleport away. Stairs will lower on both sides of the floor, allowing the fire team to advance to the next floor. Repeat this process on the 3 different floors to advance to the final stand floor, where the 3 plates will be in a row towards the Caretaker. The same mechanic to damage exists here. No obelisk to worry about. Now for Zo-Arak. The first phase of the encounter starts off with 2 solar-shielded Centurions spawning in the area Zo-Arak occupies. Once defeated, 4 terrestrial Lieutenant Colossi will spawn on the 4 large triangular platforms on the sides of the arena. Guardians who defeat a terrestrial lieutenant will be able to see the index planets, glowing light or dark, and must communicate which planets are mismatched, and must be switched. Dedicating 1 Guardian on each triangular platform, these Guardians should call out which planet is mismatched on their side, interact with the small orb beneath that planet, and then interact with the mismatched planet on the other side of the room, and call out their compatriot. The 2 lower triangular platforms should coordinate with each other, with the 2 higher platforms doing the same with one another. Once an orb has been interacted with, Guardians have a set timer on the left of their screen before the planetary shift concludes and the planets begin moving. If a planet is moved to the destination that is already occupied by another, it will return to its original position. This means the planets may only move to spots where the destination planet is moving, forcing Guardians to essentially swap planets on the left and right. If done correctly, the second phase will begin, and the index planets will reveal themselves in the center. Guardians must kill terrestrial lieutenants to see which of the 3 plates in the center requires a planet of that color. This time, Guardians must move planets to have a certain color to the plate in the center with the corresponding color, light or dark. Once the planets and destinations have been selected, the planetary shift timer will end, and the planets will move over the 3 plates. If the index paracausal forces match, light or dark, the damage phase will begin. If index paracausal forces do not match, it will trigger a planetary collision and wipe the fire team. If Guardians take too long on either phase, Zo-Arak will attempt to align the planets incorrectly, causing 3 separate planetary collisions which emit a lethal wave of energy that destroys everything in the arena. With an alignment performed, Zo-Arak will return to their initial position and hop down to the lower level of the arena to begin the damage phase. Depending upon the aura emitted by Zo-Arak, Guardians must touch a plate matching the aura to be able to damage him. There is no necessity to stand on the plate to deal damage, you just have to touch it. So Guardians can move around and damage from any position. Once a short time has passed, Zo-Arak will power up a Twister Flame and send it towards the fire team, changing their shield alignment, meaning Guardians must observe its state, stand on the corresponding plate, and begin damaging him once again. Once all 3 plates have been exhausted, Zo-Arak will become immune to damage and the fight repeats. Once Zo-Arak reaches the final stand, or if he becomes enraged, he will initiate a non-stop damage phase. Guardians will have to match shield alignment in the same way using the central 3 plates, and will have a certain amount of time to defeat the boss before the planets collide and kill the entire team. Now every boss fight is fun because of a few things. Their design, the music, the mechanics, and the arena you fight in. Caretaker easily wins in all of these categories. There's just more sense of urgency in the Caretaker fight as he moves closer and closer to the obelisk, whereas Zo-Arak kinda just stays in one general area with no sense of urgency. Yes, Zo-Arak's arena is cool because it's the same room from the cutscene at the end of Witch Queen, but the arena doesn't really change, yet the Caretaker's does. You get to ascend higher and higher, making the danger of falling worse and worse. So I've got no choice but to give a point to Val. I'll start by addressing the elephant in the room. Yes, I am aware that the jumping puzzle en route is a 2-parter, but I'm counting it as one for the sake of comparison, so deal with it. For Val, it's seeing the upended grow bigger and bigger the closer you get, while for Root, you have a rush of adrenaline as the wave of darkness energy rushes towards you as you seek shelter. I think Root's is cooler simply due to the urgency of having to mix light and dark to survive Nezarek's wave of darkness. Oh, and a little detail, but you can line up the waves in their build up to Nezarek's heartbeat, since at this point in the raid, his new body is nearly complete. Point to Root. Here we are, the precipice of the raids, where 2 gods meet. Truly devoted disciples to their god. Starting with the lone survivor of his kind, one that was destroyed by his own hand, versing a being of nightmares who made scions worship him. One shall stand, and one shall fall. The final stage of Val the Disciple concerns the defeat of Rolk, Disciple of the Witness. Initially, Guardians will notice a sarcophagus-like object floating at the top of the stairs at the back of the arena. Approaching this will wake Rolk up, with dialogue playing and him projecting a force field out that will push Guardians back to the starting edge of the arena, where a rally flag can be placed. Be aware that adding any additional force, such as jumping, will accelerate the push from the force field, potentially sending you flying over the edge into the abyss below. This is important to remember for a later part in the fight. Allowing it to push you and not moving will mean the friction of your character landing will prevent you from going over the edge. Once being pushed back, stepping up to the first set of short stairs and approaching the force field will prompt Rolk to summon his glaive, applying the Stacks of Pervading Darkness debuff to all fireteam members. Shooting the glaive above his head will break it, providing a leeching force buff to the Guardian dealing the killing blow. It is advised that the Guardian breaking the glaive use a long-range weapon, such as a scout or pulse rifle, to make the job easier. It can take a few hits before breaking. Now come to the tactics, where you will need to assign specific roles to your fireteam. The role of Swapper is to ensure that at least one Guardian holds the leeching force buff at all times. If your fireteam loses this, Rolk will resummon his glaive and begin applying Pervading Darkness again. Repeating this 3 times will mean that the glaive will become invincible, ensuring the fireteam is wiped when Pervading Darkness stacks reach 10. There is a plate in the middle ground of the lowest part of the arena, and standing on this while under the influence of leeching force will summon 2 darkness cruxes in the back of the arena. When Guardians shoot these two and break them, Leeching Force will be applied to them and removed from the initial swapper, giving the role its name. You just need to swap the buff between Guardians to keep things rolling. If you are a designated swapper, be careful not to be hit by Rolk's Beam of Darkness attack. Being hit by it will transform your buff into Emanating Force, which cannot be swapped to other Guardians. Also be aware of the timer on your Leeching Force. Once it hits 0, you will die. The role of the Dunker involves taking Leeching Force and then transforming it from Emanating Force by being hit by Rolk's Beam of Darkness. Once Emanating Force is held, it must be deposited at a specific point in the raid arena to push back the force field, allowing fire teams to progress further into the fight. Possessing Emanating Force means the barrier will no longer push you back. The role of Reader is to take note of the symbols appearing on the 6 different pillars spread throughout the arena. The Reader will look for the right symbol as called out by the players reading the symbols dropped from the Glyph Keepers, and they will indicate which pillars a Guardian holding Emanating Force must go towards to dunk it to progress the fight. If a Dunker deposits at the wrong pillar, it will cause them to die, as the symbol must match for a safe dunk. A good spot for the Reader to be able to see almost all the symbols at once is standing at the top left pillar just at the top of the first set of small stairs, where the fight is triggered. The fight is split into 2 phases, the first being where you dunk the pillars and push Rolk further back into the arena. The second part is where you truly face Rolk. As you step into the next area, Rolk will be found levitating in midair. Getting close enough or advancing far enough into the arena will cause him to slam down to the ground and begin patrolling after a random target. This can be controlled by firing at him, but not guaranteed. After a few seconds, Rolk will begin telegraphing a charge attack with his glaive. After a couple of seconds, he will rush forward and slice at the indicated endpoint of the charge. Anyone caught by this will be dealt damage and sent flying. Take note that only the endpoint of the charge will lead to damage. Guardians can run directly at Rolk if found near the end of the charge and avoid damage completely. During this time, set waves of Shadow Thrall will spawn, 2 in each corner of the square arena. When this charge is complete, he will leave behind a glaive floating. Shoot at this until it breaks to once again grant Leeching Force to the Guardian delivering the killing blow, and leave behind a stack of symbols. Meanwhile, Rolk will be stalking after Guardians, aiming to kick them if he gets close enough. Guardians should stay away from him to prevent this and avoid delaying the next attack. This next attack will involve Rolk charging up his Beam of Darkness, but at this time it will emanate from him in an X or T shape, indicated by 4 shapes forming around him during the charge up animation. This will inflict heavy damage, quickly rack up stacks of Pervading Darkness, and will transform any Leeching Force into Emanating Force once again. However, this attack is fairly easy to dodge if you're watching for it. The Guardians holding Leeching Force should aim to have this transformed into Emanating Force, with the rest of the fire team advising them on which symbols was left behind by the glaive upon breaking it. The Emanating Guardians must then go to the pillar with the corresponding symbol and deposit their buff. Once Emanating Force is correctly deposited in this section, Rolk will become temporarily stunned, exposing a weak point over his shoulders and then his hips with each successive deposit. You need 4 deposits in total to expose them all, Rolk repeating his previous glaive charge then beam attack once you deposit. Break these weak points by shooting them all to advance him forward to the next damage phase of the battle. Taking too long in this phase, about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, will result in Rolk charging up his barrier again, throwing all players off the upended back to the start of the fight, wasting an entire damage rotation after all 4 are broken, and wasting an entire damage rotation. After all 4 are broken, Rolk will enter an enraged state and will proceed to attack again. This is his unique damage phase, wherein he is mobile but damageable. He will summon his glaive and begin stalking after Guardians at increased speeds, combining his teleport and beam attacks into one as he attempts to kill you. The previous weak points of the fire team broke will function as crit spots, and so will his head. Having a Guardian utilize Divinity is a highly recommended method to deal damage to Rolk at this time, as the constant movement of this phase can make hitting accurate precision shots quite difficult. Also, the fire team has 3 damage phases to defeat Rolk. Failing to bring Rolk to a final stand in those 3 phases will result in the final stand starting early, and requiring more damage to kill Rolk in the time. When enough time has passed of Rolk being enraged, he will slam his glaive into the ground and begin charging up. This is your cue to begin running back to the very start of the first phase of the arena. After a set amount of time, Rolk will summon a force field that will push any remaining Guardians back. This can be an easy death sentence if you hit any objects on the way back, because you can be killed by those. You may also get sent off the arena if you are caught mid-jump by the force field. If you are unable to get to safety before the field is summoned, try to stick to the middle of the arena. This will mean no obstacles to splat off, and you have a good chance of stopping via basic floor friction when the force field stops pushing you. Repeat the process of the first phase to get back to the top. Once up there, the same applies to the previous second phase. However, once you reach the final stand, Rolk will apply constant Pervading Darkness stacks while still chasing the Guardians and casting beams. This means the fire team has a limited amount of time to kill him before being forcibly wiped out. Saving supers for the final stand is recommended, and also make sure you go into it without any prior stacks of pervading darkness. Sounds complicated, right? Well, Nezarec nearly isn't as difficult to learn.
Oh, a shame we can't entertain our one-sided conversations further. Oh, but this feels too good. Guardian, let me devour your fear.
The final fight of Root consists of combat against the reborn Nezarec. Now fed with both light and darkness by the fire team, he's now able to leave his sarcophagus. Getting in close proximity of this will trigger him to shatter it, slam to the ground, and begin the encounter. To open up Nezarec to damage, the team must link 2 sequences of light and dark seeds on the left and right sides of the arena respectively. Starting close to where the team enters this arena are the first 2 usable seeds, highlighted by the aura surrounding them. Shooting this while inside the area of effect will grant the same buff as in previous parts of the raid. Similarly, a trail of light or dark will emanate from the shot seed, pointing to another which is spawned and must be shot to create the link. Once linked, another aura will appear and around a completed seed, and a guardian must shoot this to obtain the buff, then travel back to an indicated seed to shoot it, and so on and so forth. While this is being performed, many enemies will spawn in the arena. Colossi, war beasts, and legionaries will appear in waves to tarry the team. Also, Nezarec themselves will not sit idle, performing similar attacks to Tormentors. They will periodically throw abyssal cleaves at targets close to them, or spawn a floating pool of void energy that will cast many of the same abyssal cleaves as it travels around the arena. Once enough time has passed, Nezarec will begin casting his Hatred, which spawns a psionic blast beneath Guardians, which will send them upwards after a set period of time, dealing damage. These will continue until Nezarec's chest weak point is broken. Once broken, Nezarec will jump down from their perch and begin to chase Guardians who broke the chest, performing enough further Torment-like attacks, such as the Void Suppression dive kick they are known for. The hunted Guardian will eventually lose the attention of Nezarec, then they will pick a new target and chase them, but it can be regained by once again breaking the chest. The timer for the fight that determines failure or success revolved around a spell Nezarec will begin casting, wherein they exhibit a strong white glow. Once enough time has passed, Nezarec will unleash a pulse of overwhelming energy or overwhelming light, wiping the entire team if they are not sufficiently protected. Similar to the platforming section before Macrocosm, Guardians must create a refuge of light or darkness, matching the spell Nezarec will cast. To determine the spell type, the shoulder weak points of Nezarec must be broken. Once they are broken, Nezarec will display a light or darkness color tattoos across his body for the brief amount of time, matching the spell they will prepare. Shoot the matching seed while holding the opposite of paracausal affinity, similar to the pre-macrocosm relay platforming, to create the field that will grant a 14-second buff that protects against Nezarec's kill spell. Be careful not to shoot the seed that currently holds an aura around it, as doing so will not create a refuge. Instead, it will provide the field of light or flux of darkness buff instead. The protection buff can be refreshed repeatedly by getting close to the seed once the refuge has been created, and the refuge can stay until Nezarec casts the spell. Once a side has fully linked their seeds, large pulses of energy will go off from them in sequence, indicating success. Once both sides have been completed, Nezarec will shortly become vulnerable, indicating a blast of light striking them. During this vulnerable phase, Nezarec will display some new attacks, such as the ability to perform a teleport into a slam that spawns large spinning void projectiles across the ground, mixed in with their regular void splashes. As they are not inactive during the damage phase, it would be advised to locate the team on the final seed spot on either the light or dark sides, as Nezarec will be unable to teleport behind the group, ensuring that the site won't be lost during the short damage phase. As Nezarec becomes immune, they will prepare a slam attack which will suppress any guardians caught in the vicinity. This is Fire Team's cue to return their initial starting positions from whence the fight repeats itself. If Nezarec's health is depleted enough to reach final stand, Nezarec will roar, displaying more resonant energy coursing through their body, and turning black. Now it's a race to deplete Nezarec's health before they prepare another overwhelming energy blast that will annihilate the Fire Team. Okay, so those are the mechanics for the 2 fights. Now let's compare some of the finer details. Rolk's arena takes place inside the Upended and above Zaita, the Nurturing Worm, who's the mother of all worm gods. Nezarec's actually takes place at the beginning of the raid, just that the arena has been overrun by the roots from the Tree of Silver Wings, which has fully grown in the background. Rolk has dialogue throughout the entire encounter mocking you, whereas Nezarec, he only really grunts. I like the idea of the final boss arena being at the beginning of the raid, like what they did with Tanix in the Deepstone Crypt, but here the arena just doesn't look that interesting, and with how easy it is to bug out Nezarec during the fight, his fight feels yet again like another boss that just stands there and gets shot at. All while Rolk actively moves throughout the arena and genuinely fights back, like look at his kick! Plus, Rolk has a better design when it comes to a boss. Nezarec just looks fat and doesn't feel intimidating, so it's a very easy point that goes to Val here. Okay, so we've covered all the encounters, but what are the smaller things in the raid? Well, throughout Root of Nightmares, there's this massive seed in the background, the source of the roots infesting the pyramid. Those who played during the season of Arrivals might recognize this tree as the Tree of Silver Wings. Throughout this raid, the roots become more and more present all while the seed grows, until at the final boss it is fully developed and overrun the pyramid completely. In Vow of the Disciple, there are many different environmental details that tell a fascinating story about Rolk's past and what he's been up to while trapped inside the pyramid. For example, that giant bone in the Acquisition encounter? It belonged to the Leviathan for Fundament. Yep, the very one from the Books of Sorrow. As mentioned before, there are Scorn frozen in crystals being infused with worm larvae, scattered throughout the raid, and I think it's such a cool detail, especially when it ties into what the Caretaker is. Speaking of worms, the giant worm mother under the final boss arena just looks so damn cool. Rolk is the reason the Hive became what they are today. Root just doesn't have that to the same level as Vow. Sure, you've got Nezarek's body being built and the Tree of Silver Wings growing, but besides that, there aren't really any cool visuals. I've always liked Vow's music more than Root's. It's just got that energy to it for all of the encounters that Root just can't compete with. The overrun pyramid design is interesting, but just not as nice to look at as the sleek pyramid structure of Rolk's with the looming presence of the upended that Rolk never shuts up about. So, I've got to give a point to Vow. Ladies and gentlemen, we've arrived at the moment of truth. The time when two gods must clash and only one can rise from the ashes. It certainly was a close one, but the title of Better Raid can only go to one. Let's get a drum roll started. And the winner is... Vow of the Disciple. Vow is not only a longer raid with 6 encounters compared to Root's 4, including one that I didn't cover in the comparison because there was no encounter to compare it to, but it also has a much cooler aesthetic, music, and overall better mechanics. Root has its moments, but with how buggy it can be in certain parts and how you can cheese the final boss's mechanic with brute force, it just nearly isn't as fun. So congratulations, Rolk, you get to take home the trophy today.
Wake me when you're done playing around, little ones.
Raids will always be a core part of Destiny, and we can compare them all we want, but in the end, they are there for fun and for us to enjoy. So if you agree or disagree with what I said today, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Who knows, maybe if this video does well, I'll compare some more raids in Destiny, or maybe some dungeons. I've been Fawn Umbrella 612, and I hope you have an amazing day. Stay frosty.